This is Mandatory Listening, a podcast about the whats, whys, and hows of effective practical leadership shared by successful leaders and by your host, Dan Mann.
This is Mandatory Listening with your host, Dan Mann, joined as always by Kent Mann.
Hello, morning.
I like your last name, Kent.
It's a good one. It's not the worst last name you can have.
No, it's not. Yeah. But so welcome to all of our listeners. We're happy to have you here on the day after the time change. Did you get that extra hour of sleep? And
good? I did, and I appreciated it. Yeah, you haven't been on the podcast in a couple of times, right?
Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe we find out that should be something that happens more often.
Well, you being on the road.
Well, I came in today. We've got a whole new studio set up. So
that's right.
New mics and a whole new.
That's right. Technology. We've done some work.
Well, listen, let's get to it. We've got a very exciting guest, and I hope an excited guest as well, Ryan Hawk from the Learning Leaders Show. Good morning, Ryan. Good morning, Ryan.
Oh, I'm sorry. Good morning, guys. I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for having me.
I had a fleeting moment, like, wait a minute, he's still there, right? I hope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where are you today, Ryan?
I'm in Dayton, Ohio.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, I'm certain that all the podcast listeners out there have come across you at some time or the other, but just in case there may be that rare person that doesn't know your background, give us a little bit about yourself. Take us back and tell us how you got here today, who you are.
Sure. So as you mentioned, founder and host of the Learning Leaders Show. I've been doing that now for almost 4 years, 280 plus episodes. It's my favorite thing to do is have interesting conversations with fascinating people, leaders from all over the world in different industries, and understand how they've been able to sustain excellence over an extended period of time. Ask them, I hope, thoughtful questions and even better follow-up questions to get to the heart of what really made them tick, and then make it practical for my listeners so that they can learn to implement for themselves as well. But prior to that, I've worked in corporate America for 12 years, started as an inside sales representative, worked my way up to be a manager and then a director, and ultimately was a VP of North American sales at a Fortune 500 company. I started that podcast, it's a Learning Leader Show, in the middle of doing that. And I'm very fortunate that seems to be that enough people listened, and a few important people that are certainly important in my life listened, that I was offered the chance to leave corporate America to create a leadership advisory practice line with managing director and owner of Brixey and Meyer, a really cool firm here in Dayton that voted one of the best places to work every year. And so I've started that about a year ago. Actually, we're coming up on my 1-year anniversary where I left corporate America. Now I do that full time. So I run our leadership advisory practice team at Brixey and Meyer, get to do the full podcast full time, keynote speak about 30 to 40 times a year, work within businesses to help with their leadership teams, do some one-on-one work as well. And now working on some pretty cool events that we have planned for next year, some bigger theater type events with some other people in the community. So a lot going on. I'm very excited. I also like to write a bit and have a big project from a writing perspective as well. So there's a lot of different things, guys, and feel very fortunate to get to do pretty much what I love every day. I know that that's unfortunately rare at times, but I feel good about it, and I'm happy to get to do it and try to serve my audience as best I can.
In a lot of ways, I would describe you as we've followed you and listened and watched and read. As you said, you do all of those things. You're just the style of your video podcast and the shows and the people you've talked to. One word comes to mind. There are many words I would use to describe you. One of those is productive. Man, you are putting out some content. It's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the combination of consistency and quality is very big deal to me. So showing up every Sunday night at 7:00 Eastern for my listeners, so that the early listeners can check it out Sunday night. But a lot of people, it's their Monday morning commute. And I like being part of people's routines. I like helping people start the week off on a high note with some energy and some good value and some practicality. I like that. And so I've worked hard to make that part of, I guess, be a part of my listeners' regular routine. I think that's a good thing. But I will say I will not sacrifice quality for consistency. So it's imperative that both are equally important. And to me, they are. And so I try really hard to do that.
Quick question for you. How important is a daily routine to you? whether it be your personal routine or how much do you advocate for people create their own routine?
Great leaders have great rituals, and so it's a big deal to me to have. I do think you need to be open for spontaneity. You need to be open to new ideas, and you need to open to changing things. But for example, I do start my day off the exact same every day. I've learned that from, like I said, 280 plus conversations with these leaders who sustain excellence. That seems to be one of the commonalities among them, is that there's a dedicated daily morning routine to get the day started correctly, especially for those of us who are married with kids. Sometimes that's the only time you get to yourself. And I think that self-reflection time is critically important. Try to do that very early in the morning. And I also think taking care of your body physically can have an impact on you mentally for the rest of the day. So I do that as well. So spend some of that thoughtful, introspective time early on, get hydrated, get physical, sweat, and then get to the family and have a nice breakfast before we put the girls on the bus and then get to work. So I think that's a very big deal to me, mainly because like I said, I've learned it from so many of those others that I've spoken to who seem to be, as you said, very productive, putting out good work. And I try, like I said, to do the same.
I totally agree. I think routines build the habits of, the most productive people in our society and the most intelligent. It's funny, me and my brother were listening to the Joe Rogan podcast the other day on a long commute, and it was the one with Elon Musk, which is about 3 hours long. At a certain point, they start talking about really in-depth physics and the way the world works. And, me and Hank were just thinking to ourselves, like, man, how did this guy get so smart? Like, how is he, how are people like this born? And we started talking about it and we broke it down like he's just created a routine and a system to where the things that he thinks about and that occupy most of his space are those really important deep questions. And so really what makes him a genius is his habitual routines that he does day in, day out, the way he questions the world, the way he sees the world. And so, really, you can break down what a genius is by the things that they occupy their time most of the time. And I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I agree. And especially when talking about Elon, I mean, he's a notorious first principles thinker. So he thinks that things at a foundational level and asks the question why a lot. So why are rockets so expensive? And he kept asking that over and over and over. Flew overseas to meet with people to talk to them about that, and then realized that. Well, one of the things is that we got to figure out a way to make them reusable, right? And then he used that type of foundational thought process with building an electric car, with now putting solar panels on roofs, with sending rockets up in space. Now, he probably has some inherent traits that allow him to be smart, but then you study his upbringing and the fact that he's such a well-read, curious kid, and took that into his life. He's got a willingness to risk a little bit, which I think is a big deal as well. But as you said, I think it starts just at a foundational level of what is your standard operating procedure. And for Elon, it always is thinking from a first principles perspective to get to the root of everything and to ask the question why. And I think there's a lot we can all learn from somebody like that. Like, he has his faults just like everybody else, but from a thinking perspective, he's certainly one of the best.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, we love the currency that runs through your message and in both podcasts and writing about this idea of a leader who's learning, a leader who's developing, a leader who's focusing on him or herself. And part of that, and I know you've experienced it because your track record, prior to business as well as in business, has been leading teams, quarterbacking teams, as it were. And so for our audience, as we talk about this learning and developing, what is from your perspective, what is the real core to success happens to be building that great team. So, just love to get your thoughts on team. Why is having a team so important, and the key elements associated with getting that team built?
So we could probably talk for an hour about just the thought process around building a great team, but I think to drill down a bit, to zoom in a little bit, I think the building of great teams starts with the leader. It makes or breaks the difference of the team. First of all, the leader, the critical point in the building of that team is the who. When I spoke with Jim Collins, that's what he mentioned the most was you're asking the wrong questions. He was pushing me a bit and said it's who before what. And so I think it's understanding the types of the characteristics in those people that you want on the team. So the who is more important than the what. Certainly the why is very important. Why are we doing this? And I think as a leader, you have to be able to communicate that, share that with the team so that they have a distinct and clear understanding when it comes to what are we trying to do? What are we doing? And then regular feedback, coaching, follow up as the leader with all of those who are on your team. And think about this. Are you creating the environment where people want to work really hard? Are you creating that environment? I think about the best football teams I've been on, or the best businesses I've been part of, the best teams in business that I've been on. The leader did a great job of making it a place where we wanted to really do great work. We didn't do it just because we wanted a paycheck or because it was our job and we had to and we didn't want to get fired. We did it because we truly cared about the mission. The leader did a great job of communicating that. And I think that's a key skill when it comes to building a team, is understanding the who, and then understanding how to communicate what we want to do, why we're doing it, so that other people will actually care. But that, again, it all kind of points back to the leader. Does the leader care about me personally as a member of this team? If he or she does, the chances of us being successful go way up in that case.
So from a practical standpoint, when we have a team, I guess I'll just lay it out. So a team within a team, and I'm thinking mainly of like a retail space where they have maybe a CEO and then several locations, like maybe 10 different stores. So like a team within a team. Do you think it's the manager of each store? Yeah, the manager of each store. Do all the managers get together with the CEO and say, okay, this is our why? Or when you're coming up with your why, do you sit together with even the sales associates, the low level introductory employees, and then create the why? Or do you think it's the top manager's job to create the why?
It's probably a combination, but I think I've worked in a situation like this where I was the mid-level manager, and we, as my team, did create our own little culture within the culture, based on some surrounding things that maybe people didn't love. And so I felt like we were forced to do that. Now, was that beneficial to the overall business? It ended up being, because it created, it became contagious. And so others started doing it as well. And so we almost built a culture from within a big business, starting with just a small team of 17 people that I was leading. So I do think it can be created from there. It's obviously very helpful if the person at the top of that is right in the middle, having a frontline obsession with their people, talking to them, listening to them, understanding what they're going through, understanding the customer or the clients that they're working with, being a great listener, being empathetic. All of that, I think, can make it much easier than having one team try to do it at a time. But like I said, I lived in a situation like that, and worked hard to build our own little culture, our own niche. We built flags, we had team name, we did cool events together. I mean, we did a lot of neat things to build our culture so that it made it a place where people wanted to work. And then others started looking at our team saying, wait, we should do that. How did you do that? How can you help us do that over here? And then we would, work to do that. And we're very proud of that. So I think it can happen both ways. Preferably the person at the very top, though, is one who has deep care for the entire organization, is willing to get close with them, to talk to them, to listen to them, so that they can help lead that charge.
I really love the language you dropped out there, the frontline obsession. Man, oh man. When it comes to service or it comes to sales, it's a passion for the folks that interact most directly with your customers that makes a difference. And I also want to go back, because I'm envious you talked with Jim Collins, who's a bit of a hero, and I loved, of course, Good to Great, and we reference his level 5 leader pyramid quite frequently. I want to go back to, at the bottom. I won't quote this exactly because I don't have it in front of me, but the bottom level of that leadership, the level 1, is a person with talents and skills who is capable of producing good work. That's the basis, that frontline employee. But the second level up, and I forget what he calls it, maybe you can recall it, but it's a team member. So this is the differentiator, and it's kind of what you're saying. If talented people who are capable of also being on a team. And I find that those two don't always reside in the same person. Really talented people, but can't be on a team and aren't successful. It takes someone who knows how to be on a team.
So yeah, you that brings me to an interesting thought. I had taken a class in college and we read the book called The Challenger Sales.
Mm-hmm.
And so the number two producer in a company is typically that lone wolf, the person who doesn't follow the team.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get results no matter what. If there's a corporate policy, I'm going to be loose with it. And then the number one is the challenger sales. So the lone wolf, not necessarily, doesn't lack skills, clearly has a skill set, maybe has that hunger, that sales hunger, really go getter, but only answerable to themselves, which is a key flaw I think you're pointing out there.
Yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts on this, because I think it's probably part of a dysfunction within a team, or maybe the way a team evolves into really greatness.
Right.
Yeah. So are you talking from a challenger sales perspective, or Jim Collins, the 5 levels of leadership? What are you thinking?
Mix it all in there and
Yeah.
come up with the magic. But I think the thing I'm looking for is the leader who's able to create that team of people who not only are the talented. You said it starts with the right people, but the people who are able to not just be individually talented, but understand the components and what it takes to be on a team as the differentiator.
Yeah, I mean, part of this is obviously hiring profile. So, but I also realize there are people who are currently being promoted to a team, and they can't just fire everybody. So you got to make it work with what you got. And some of the best coaches, for example, I look at Sean McVay with the LA Rams. He got the job and has the same quarterback and a lot of the same players. They've added a few, and he turned it completely around because I think of his process and his ability to create a culture. But let's say you have I remember when I first got hired to manager, I didn't really have a ton of direction, and I wanted to hire 17 people that were exactly like me. That was a huge mistake, and I made mistakes in the hiring process because you need what Shane Snow would call cognitive diversity. I want people that think differently. That's how a team, maybe they have a different background, a different upbringing. They went to a different college. They have different life experiences leading to the team. You get that type of group of people in a room, you have a real chance for them to become multipliers, to help each other, to amplify their work and make them better, because they're creating more ideas when you do get together. I changed, I learned, I grew as I was hiring. Instead of looking for people who were just like me, to look people who had certain fits on the team. Now, we all had to have certain values, right? We're not going to cheat. We're not going to steal. We're going to work hard, like basic things. But then you start looking for different backgrounds and different types of people who can make the team more complete so that they could work together. That was the other thing I did. I will say I did at the beginning, and I still like people who have been a part of a team, whether that's in the military, whether that's playing sports, team sports. I have found in my experience, and certainly talking to others, that those who have been part of where they've had to work in groups and work effectively in groups and have had success working in groups tend to have a better chance to do better as a whole and to make our team better, which is the goal of the leader of the team. And so I do like that. I think there's some good experiences you can get. And certainly my own, I played sports in college, and I've been on really successful winning teams, and I've been on really bad teams. So I've got to see both, which is actually helpful to understand, okay, what is it? What was my team like that was bad? And then what was my team like that was really good, outside of just our talent, right? The talent of the players. Like, what was the leadership like? And so I've been able to draw from all that to help me as I work to try to minimize my mistakes as I've built teams throughout the course of my career.
So I brought up, or I was thinking about a topic that my brother Hank was a teacher for about a couple years. We've talked about how when you have a bad student or maybe a bad team member in this scenario, and you introduce them to a productive team, does it make the bad kid better, or does it make the whole class worse? And I'd like to get maybe whether it's in your experience or what your opinion on that is. When you have a low level producer or a ineffective team member, or maybe they have a great skill set, they just can't work on a team. Does it make the whole team worse, or does it make them better by putting them on a good team?
I think, I mean, I don't mean to hedge, but it certainly depends. It depends on the situation and the
Oh, for
environment.
sure.
I
Yeah.
do think you can
Yeah.
create culture and enough power and care in a team to lift other people up. And so I've personally seen that happen, where after we've built a powerful culture, a team of givers, of helpers, of who enjoyed seeing the success of other people, that they would take a marginal player, I guess we can use that phrase, and lift them up. However, if I have also seen it where you get a potential bad attitude and they combine with another bad attitude, and before you know it, you've got a little click, and then you have some problems. And so for me as the leader, I learned this lesson the hard way. If you find that with the bad attitude, the low effort, or perhaps they're not trustworthy, you must move quickly and get rid of them. That sounds harsh. However, I remember waiting a little bit too long to fire somebody at one point, and the leaders of my team, the great performers of my team, came to me afterwards and said, "What took you so long?" And it was I felt really bad about myself, and they were right. And I learned a lot. And they said, "We knew it." And I said, "Well, there's two things that bother me here. One is that you should have said something to me earlier." And I said, "Well, we're not the manager. We didn't feel like we could." Two, just the fact that I did it, that I waited too long. And I had my reasons, right? I was concerned, for them personally and being the breadwinner, and they were single parent. Like those are all excuses, and those are all things. They're real life things. But at the end of the day, if you find somebody who is pulling the team down, who can potentially create some real negativity and not be an uplifting member of the team, and you don't act swiftly, it can really damage the team long term. And I was lucky that in that case it didn't happen, but it was an eye-opening moment for me as a manager, as a leader of that team, that I messed up, and I was told by the members of my team, and I learned a lot from it, and it certainly changed my behavior moving forward.
Well, I know from a personal standpoint, I also played sports in college, and then also in working in my professional career, I've been on a team where, a quote unquote poisonous behavior, mindset, whatever, has come in. And because of a lack of leadership at the top, it permeated throughout. So there was no one to come in and say, no, 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 this is not the way we're going to behave. This is not the standard to which we have. No one had that leadership moment where they decided to not make a hard decision.
They didn't
And
protect
then
the
it just
environment.
and then it created an unproductive environment for everyone where no one felt rewarded. No one felt like there was a way up. And so it just became, toxic. And I'm talking also sports as well as professional.
Sure.
And I believe it's both.
Yeah, I mean, sports can be tough, especially if it's a really good player and
Yeah.
they've
Yeah.
got issues and deficiencies when it comes to attitude or effort, or they're chirping in the locker room. I mean, I've handled that, and that's tough, especially I played on football, and there's 85 guys, and sometimes you have a player who's remarkable talent, and yet they're not good there. Then you have a tough decision to make. Is this, are we going to move forward with something like this? Are we going to try to help them? Can we do that? Because we want to build the proper culture for this team. And you see coaches struggle with this every single week, right? On all teams. And some of the great teams are the ones that are able to figure that out more so than the ones who fail.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, it's really, a sense of, number one, the two ways you have to motivate this group are both individual motivation and then this team culture.
Yeah.
When you're the armchair quarterback and you get to watch all this play out on television, you can say, you should got to get rid of that guy. That wide receiver's killing his team. He's so selfish. It's easy when you're over here watching it from a TV screen. When it's up close and personal and you're the manager and it's a salesperson who's highly productive,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to really sort all this out and make a good decision. So I'm interested in your thoughts on that as a manager, and you're managing all these different players and you're looking to create this right team environment while also individually motivating people. What are some tips? What are the thoughts? How do you go about doing this? What, give our listeners some ideas on managing this effectively so they can build that cohesive and high performing team.
Well, I would take it back to what is your overall framework at a foundational level. And so I think it's always better to play the long game, although it's harder sometimes because you have immediate pressure from your boss, from the business, from shareholders, from whatever it may be. They want results right now. And so hopefully you're able to balance that, because long term, even if they are the number one producing salesperson, but they don't do it the right way, whether let's say they push the boundary too much on what's ethical. We've all seen probably in sales from time to time, they do things that are simply not right. They may have a poor attitude. Maybe they don't show up on time, like all whatever it may be. And some of those things can compile. I think if at a foundational level, your belief is this is not the type of person who is adding to my culture, then you have to, again, make a move. That is much easier said than done. However, I've been in that position before and have had to make those moves, and you certainly take a short-term hit. It hurts you. But I think long-term, you'll be better off. And like I said, this is much easier said than done. But I think if you're willing to take the long game and play in that arena, you'll be better off for the length of your career versus just thinking, oh, well, I got to hit my number this month or this quarter or this year, saying, I know here is why we made a change, or here's why I had to make this very tough decision, because these are at a core of the culture I'm working to build, and here's my belief system, and this is why I do it. I think you could earn a lot of respect both from your team members and from the people who work around you, even if you take a short-term hit.
I'm totally on the same page. It's like making it to the playoffs 2 years in a row, or for 1 year making it to the Super Bowl. It's like that little difference of success that takes a couple years of development. It takes, you got to cut, a bad team member and then wait a year to develop the new player or get the new, the one contributing to your culture.
Yeah, we talk about in my book, The Orbit, the Art and Science of Influence. I talk about how important negative simulation is to really rapidly increase buy-in. Once you understand what you don't want, it helps you move very quickly toward what you would want. And in a lot of ways, that negative performance really does rapidly increase buy-in, in my opinion.
And getting agreement on, all right, this is not how we're going to do things, and people are like, oh, okay, that makes sense. That narrows what it takes to be right now. Now I know what I need to do.
Completely agree. Completely.
Yeah, I wonder about if any other thoughts from your perspective on enriching or increasing or rapidly increasing the level of buy-in for your team.
It goes back to, from a caring perspective. One of the things I like to do early on, whether I was leading a new team or got a new team member on as part of my group, is having specific exercises in place to shows that showed that I cared more about them as a person than anything else. So I had this, I think, useful getting to know you document where I would ask them to fill out 20 to 25 questions about themselves personally, some of their thought process, what they care about, some of their kind of their history a bit. I did have to make it optional based on some HR things, but everybody did it. And then I would do it as well. And we would have a long meeting to set the foundation for our relationship with each and every team member that I worked with. And so I think that helped build, initially saying, wow, I get a sense that my manager really seems to care. Like, we had a long conversation after we both filled out these things. We talked about our lives. We talked about our spouses, our kids, their names, everything that they truly cared about. And then I also had I would use that later on. Then let's say that person, I worked in sales, that person had a successful month or a successful quarter, then I could use that to send handwritten notes to their husband or wife or to their kids and say, hey, your mom or dad is absolutely blowing out of the water. Tell them great job, and here is a video game, or here's cookies, or something like that. And so I think one of the great ways to take care of somebody, one of the great ways to support and love somebody, is to love on who they love. So they love their spouse, they love their kids. That is a great opportunity, I think, for you as the leader to love on who they love. That you're gonna really create buy-in. They're gonna know that you care right from the beginning, so that when things go well, or when things don't go well, they're gonna think, I got to get through this. I love my boss. I love my manager. I love my teammates. I want to find a way to get through this tough moment, because everyone's going to face adversity from time to time. And I want to try to help prepare them for those moments so we can get through it together.
You sound like an evil villain going for someone's loved ones, except it's a good thing.
Well, I mean, my buddy John Rulin, who wrote Giftology, and he says love on who loves them. And I think I love it. We're saying that word a lot, but I do. I think that's really beneficial in the long-term success and culture building of a team.
Yeah, I now that you've said it out loud, it totally makes sense. It's like, why does going after someone's loved ones in a horror movie, that's so bad, but then when you encourage and promote the person to their loved ones, it's like just as good. It's on the opposite spectrum.
Are you a dad yet?
What's that?
Are you a dad? Are you married, have kids, anything?
No, definitely not.
So I'm sorry. I think one of the coolest things that I've seen is when I give gifts and handwritten notes to the kids of members of the team that I work on, because I don't know, all of us parents, in a way, like, I want my children I want them to think I do a good job. I want them to know that I'm working really hard to support them, to take care of them, to create an environment for them to thrive. And so when somebody I work with were to send a note to them saying your dad is crushing it and he works so hard, you should be so proud. I mean, that's as good as it gets, man. That's better than giving me a TV or something. I mean, that's great. So I think try to, as a manager, as a leader, like, think of ways to do that. It can be so different because most people, unfortunately, do not do that. They say they get too busy or they have too much going on, and they don't do that. But it's absolutely possible, and it should be a part of your regular behavior as a leader.
That's beyond, that's taken two steps beyond, I think,
Yeah.
what most people do.
I love this. I think this is really very practical, usable for our audience. And I do have 4 kids, including the young man sitting across from me here. So I get it and completely agree with you entirely.
Yeah, you want him to think, hey, like, he's working his butt off for me, and he cares, and he's doing a good job, and that's a great feeling, man.
Spot on.
Yeah.
So as we bring this our podcast to a close, I want to be sure our audience knows how to find you. I know that learningleader.com is your website. There are a ton of resources there, including this podcast. But where else might we go looking for more of you? Because I think our audience is going to want to follow you even more now.
Well, my buddy Neil Pasricha created something for me that was really neat, and maybe we can do it here too. So we called it the End of the Podcast Club. And what the End of the Podcast Club is for those listeners who listened all the way to the end to send us, I'll give you my email, you can give yours if you'd like. I'll give my personal email out, and you write me a note and saying, hey, Ryan, I made it to the end of the podcast club. I loved this specific thing that you guys talked about. And maybe it creates a cool dialogue. So the End of the Podcast Club, write me a note, put that in the subject line, and it's ryan@learningleader.com. And who knows, we could create some sort of cool dialogue. I mean, I read this great story about the founders of Airbnb, and they said that the reason that they were able to build their business is because they scaled it by doing things that wouldn't scale. And so what they did is they actually flew to New York City and were the photographers themselves for the first hundreds of apartments that were on Airbnb, and they took the pictures themselves. They learned photography because they knew that they needed good pictures of apartments. And so that did not scale. And I don't think answering emails one at a time scales, but I still love to do it. And so I would say be a part of this End of the Podcast Club. Send me a note, tag you guys if you want to put your emails on it. If you don't, that's fine too. But be a part of that club, and let's create even more dialogue.
That's fantastic. I have one final question for you. And by the way, if you're still listening, congratulations. You just got a phenomenal invitation
Definitely.
from one of the absolute real leaders in leadership in the United States. So, I mean, that is pretty significant,
Yeah.
Ryan. That's fantastic that you're offering that. And for those still listening, good for you. Take advantage of this pretty spectacular offering. Now, you've done hundreds and hundreds of interviews with, I'm looking at the list. It is the cream of the crop of the best authors and leaders and thought leaders across the world. It's impressive. Just here, I'm going to put you on the spot. Was there any one of them that stands out to you as a favorite? Like, I really loved that interview. Was there someone there that really, you'd say, that's the one I'd point to?
So you have 4 kids, and I'm asking you to name your favorite. And I bet you couldn't do it.
How about a range? Maybe a top 5 then.
Yeah.
I'll give you a top 5 if that would help.
So I just flew out to Los Angeles and sat down with George Raveling. And George, first African-American basketball coach in the Pac-8, which is now the Pac-12, he was standing directly to the left of Dr. Martin Luther King during the I Have a Dream speech. He asked Dr. King for the handwritten speech or the speech after he gave it, and he gave it to him, and then George still has it. He's 81 years old. He's got the curiosity of my 4-year-old daughter. He asks questions constantly. He reads and reads and reads and reads. Coach Raveling was a life-changing experience for me. It's hard to say what is the best, and I'm not going to say it's the best, but I will say it was an incredible life experience for me, and I flew out there just to do that. I flew out there. I'm in Dayton here. Flew out and back in one day, and met with him for a few hours in his office and got to see him eye to eye and just have a cool conversation while we were recording, and pretty neat while we weren't recording. And we exchanged books and just had a great talk. And I kind of became friends with one of my heroes. And so I would say that was a life-changing experience that I hope people can feel it when they listen to it. I think you can. I've got a lot of great feedback on it, but it was a great experience. So it's impossible to say what my favorite one is, but I will say that was a very memorable, kind of surreal experience for me to sit across from Coach Raveling and talk to him about signing Michael Jordan at Nike and standing next to Dr. King, and just the way he approaches life is so inspiring, man. As an 81-year-old who is just a ferocious reader and super curious, and sometimes people say you be careful to meet your heroes because they might let you down. And in his case, I had very high expectations and he somehow exceeded them. So it was really cool.
That's a pretty good response to the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've been listening to Ryan Hawk of the Learning Leaders Show. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. It was I appreciate the opportunity.
That's it for this episode. You can find Mandatory Listening on iTunes or wherever you get and subscribe to your podcasts. We'd love to hear what you think, so make sure and leave us comments on iTunes or on our website at mangroup.net, where you'll find all of our episodes. That's MANNgroup.net. Thanks for listening.